that you are having an amazing day so far. All right, so for today, we will be doing our grade 3 English lesson on sentences, fragments, and run-ons. So we'll be doing our grade 3 English lesson on sentences, fragments, and run-ons. So before we start, we're going to log into a+students.ca. We're going to log into a+students.ca with our username as well as our password. Once we've logged in with our username as well as our password, and we are going to select the subject of language arts. Grade 3, because that is the language that we are focusing on, grade 3. All right, so once you have selected grade 3, which is sentences, grade 3, you're going to scroll down up until you get to the chapter of sentences, fragments, and run-ons. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of sentences, fragments, and run-ons is the complete sentence or fragment? And is it a complete sentence or a run-on? So that is going to be our two focus lessons for tonight under the chapter of sentences, fragments, and run-ons. And we are doing the subject of English, also known as language arts. Later on during the lesson, we are going to do an activity which is going to be on A plus classes.ca. But that is what we're going to be doing later on. All right, but for now, we're going to start with our lesson on sentences, fragments, and run-ons. So the first one is basically asking, like, is our sentence is the sentence or a fragment, right? So basically, a sentence is a group of words that forms a complete thought. So a sentence is a group of words that forms a complete thought. And usually when it comes to a sentence, right, a sentence has has both a subject and it has a verb. So in order for a sentence to show complete thought or to show completeness, right, it has a subject and it has a verb. And if we look at an example of a sentence, right, my friends walk along the path. And if we select a subject and we select a verb within that sentence, we can say my friend is the subject, right? So my friend is the subject within that sentence. And then walk along the path, or just walk. So walk along the path is the verb. So this basically shows a complete thought, right? Because it has both subject and it has a verb. So this sentence has both subject and it has a verb. A sentence fragment, right? A sentence fragment is a group of words that does not express a complete thought. So if we basically compare these two, then we can say that the sentence, it completes a thought, right? It forms a complete thought, whereas a sentence does not, right? Sentence has both subject and verb, whereas a sentence fragment, it only it usually misses either a subject or a verb. So it doesn't have both. It either has only a verb or it only has a subject but does not have both. And if we look at an example, of a sentence fragment, if we look at example of a sentence fragment, and then we can maybe say kicks a ball. So basically, kicks kicks a ball. So in this case, it only shows a verb, right? Because it only kicks a ball. So now the question is, who kicks a ball, right? Because now it's missing a subject, right? So it's missing a subject. So you basically have to ask yourself, who kicks the ball? So in this case, with a sentence fragment, it is missing a subject. So the subject is missing within this sentence, and it only has a verb. And that is why we say sentence fragment is a group of words that does not express a complete thought. It is usually missing a subject or it is missing a verb. And in this case, it is missing a verb, a subject. Because the sentence here, it only says kicks a ball. But now you need to ask yourself who kicks the ball or who kicks a ball, right? So, which means that with our sentence fragment, it is missing a subject because it's not telling us who kicks a ball. And then we also have a run on sentence, right? And a run on sentence is made up of two sentences that are joined without end punctuations or with just a comma. So it's basically a sentence that goes on and it's supposed to have ended a long time, right? So now what they do is it just continues, or they add a comma in order to show a pause, but it should have been a full stop. And an example is, I knocked on the door, it opened. Which means that if we look at the first sentence, right, which is, I knocked on the door, it opened. So if we separate the sentence, right, or we fix the sentence, and then it means that it would look something like this. I knocked on the door, right? So I knocked on the door. There we have a subject, which is I. Knocked on the door is our verb. And then the next one is it opened. All right. And then we also have our next complete sentence. And the same with the next example. It started raining. We ran inside. So here what they did was it should have ended, the sentence should have ended after raining, right? Where it says that it started raining, full stop. We ran inside. So that is basically how the two sentences should have been separated, right? Because it started raining, meaning it being our subject, started raining is our verb. The same with we ran inside. We being our subject, ran inside is our verb. So that is basically the cause of the run on, because now the run on is where it is basically just two sentences that are joined without in punctuation, or they basically just put a comma, whereas it should have been a full stop, or it should have been separated by having two sentences. Because remember, we said that a complete sentence has a subject and it has a verb. All right. So now we're going back to our tutorial lesson, or our tutorial, which is on a+students.ca. So we are on a+students.ca. And the first lesson we're going to be doing is it a complete sentence or a fragment? So once again, a sentence is a group of words that forms a complete thought, right? So it completes a thought that either ends in a period or exclamation mark or question mark or something, right? But it forms a complete thought, right? And that is a sentence. And when it comes to a sentence, then a sentence has both a subject and a sentence has a verb. So it has both subject and it has a verb. And the example is, my friends walk along the path, meaning that the subject is my friends and walk along the path, or just walk is the verb within the sentence. And then a sentence fragment is a group of words that does not express a complete thought. And it usually is missing either a subject or it's missing a verb. And an example of a sentence fragment is knows the answer. Knows the answer. And over here, knows the answer, right? This is only a verb, right? And if it's only a verb, then it means that we are missing a subject. So we're missing a subject. So basically, if you were to, let's say, add something in order to complete the sentence, right? Then we can maybe add the words like she knows the answer or he knows the answer. But there is no subject at all. It just says knows the answer. So now we don't know who knows the answer because the subject is missing. A bright red car. A bright red car. So bright red car is basically only the subject. So this is definitely a fragment because it is missing a verb. Because what about the bright red car? Like, what is it actually telling us, right? Because it's just saying the bright red car, but it's not telling us what the bright red car does. So you can either say the bright red car drives, or it stops, or the bright red car um, is broken or something, right? But in this case, there is only a subject, which means it is missing a verb. Because you need to basically ask yourself, what did the bright red car do? Because it needs to actually be a verb, both verb and subject, in order to complete a sentence. All right, so now we need to say, is this a complete sentence? Announces her exciting plan. So announces her exciting plan. Do you think that is a complete sentence or do you think it is a fragment? Announces her exciting plan. So basically, if we look at the sentence, right? Announces her exciting plan. The announces alone is it's the verb, right? So announces her exciting plan is the verb. So this is basically just the verb, which means that we are missing a subject. So there's no subject within the sentence, which means that this is a fragment. So we can then say that this is a fragment. All right. If we look at the next sentence, we need to say which one is or which is a sentence fragment. An empty silver bucket or the cook always wears an apron. We need to say which one is a sentence fragment. And remember, we said a sentence fragment is either missing a subject or a verb. And a complete sentence has both subject and it has a verb. So, an empty silver bucket or the cook always wears an apron. We need to say which one is a sentence fragment that does not express a complete thought. All right, so if we select the sentence fragment, and then we are going to say it is An empty silver bucket. This is definitely not, I'm showing a complete sentence. An empty silver bucket. Because an empty silver bucket, that is a fragment. And the cook always wears an apron. That is a complete thought, and that is a sentence. And now we need to say if this is a complete sentence. She puts salt in the soup. She puts salt in the soup. So a complete sentence, which means that we have she as a verb and puts salt in the soup as the, so we have she as a subject, sorry, and we have put salt in the soup as a verb. So she as our subject, so I'm going to make S for subject and V for verb. So that is a complete sentence because it has a subject and it has a verb. All right, let's go to our test. We need to say which is a sentence fragment, meaning it does not express a complete thought. It's either missing a subject or it's missing a verb. On Kate's heavy bags. Aunt Kate or Kate's heavy baggage. And she puts salt in the soup. We need to say which one is a sentence fragment, meaning it is not a complete thought. So it's either missing a verb or it's missing a subject. So which one do you think is a sentence fragment? All right, so if we select the sentence and then we will say Aunt Kate's heavy baggage is our sentence fragment because it does not express a complete thought and it only has a subject, which is a sentence fragment. A fragment goes on a big adventure. He drew an arrow on the side. So goes on a big adventure and he drew an arrow on the side. We need to say which one is a sentence fragment. And if we look at our sentence, then yes, we can say number one goes on a big adventure because it is missing a subject. So it's not telling us who goes on a big adventure. So number one, and we can definitely say that number one is correct. So well done if you wrote number one. Lives in a salt water environment. And no clouds were in the sky. We need to say which one is a complete sentence. And remember, a complete sentence has both subject and it has a verb. Lives in a salt water environment. Or no clouds were in the sky. We need to say which one is a complete sentence. So lives in a saltwater environment, or no clouds were in the sky. And if we look at our complete sentence, and then we can say no clouds were in the sky. That is our complete sentence. Because lives in saltwater environment, that is basically just a verb and it has no subject because it does not say who lives in a saltwater environment. We need to say which is a complete sentence. Ferns grow in shady places. Ferns grow in shady places and arrived at the beach. We need to say which is a complete sentence. So we need to say which one is a complete sentence. It has a verb as well as a subject, and it's not missing either one. It's not missing a subject, it's not missing a verb. A complete sentence. Ferns grow in shady places or arrived at the beach. So if we choose the correct completed sentence, and then we will say the complete sentence is ferns. They grow in shady places. Because arrived at the beach is only a verb and it's not telling us who arrived at the beach. And now Mr. Richard is a fragment. And remember, fragment is either missing a subject or it's missing a verb. The cook always wears an apron or sold the black coat. Sold the black coat. The cook always wear an apron or sold the black coat. And if we select the sentence fragment, and then we can say sold the black coat. Because now you need to ask yourself who sold the black coat. So that is our fragment or sentence fragment. All right. Now we have also run-on sentences, right? So we are going on to the next one, which is it a complete sentence or a run-on? And remember, we see that a sentence is a group of words that forms a complete thought, right? And it has both subject and it has a verb. And a run-on sentence, right, or run-on sentences. It is made up of two sentences that are joined without an end punctuation, or basically just with a comma. So it's some sentences that should have come to a complete stop, but they still continued, or by just adding a comma. So the two examples of run-on sentences is I knocked on the door, it opened. So if we look at that sentence, I knocked on the door, it opened. So basically, we can then separate the sentence because there your sentence can end, and then this one starts with a capital letter. It started raining. We ran inside. The same with this one. Leave the comma, full stop over there, and separate those two sentences by adding your full stops. And in order for us to fix a run-on sentence, right, we need to separate the two sentences. And it's like I did with the by separating or putting a line in the middle, we need to separate the two sentences and we need to add an end punctuation. So we add an end punctuation after the first sentence and capitalize the second sentence. And here we have examples of how this was fixed. This example was fixed. So this is our sentences and this is how it was fixed. So you can also fix a run-on sentence by rewriting it as a compound sentence. And a compound sentence is two sentences that is joined by a comma as well as a coordinating conjunction, which is and, but, or so. And if we look at our sentence, we can even say, I knocked on the door and it opened, because now it is one sentence, which we call a compound sentence. All right. So now we're going to look at the two sentences and we're going to say which one is a run-on sentence. Is it the little boy popped a big balloon, or he won't get lost, I will give him directions? So if we select the run-on sentence, so if we select the run-on sentence, we will select this one. He won't get lost, I will give him directions. That is basically two sentences that is just created into one. And the little boy popped a big bubble. That is a sentence, a complete thought. If we look at these two sentences, which is a complete sentence? She sings our favorite song. We clap for her. Or, over the summer, my cousin Eva visited many times. So, over the time, my cousin Eva visited many times. So, if we select a complete sentence, right, we will say over the time, over the summer, My cousin Eva visited Minnie. And she sings our favorite song. We clap for her. That's a run on sentence. We need to say which one is a run on sentence. A run on sentence. Sandra spilled apple juice on the carpet, or Molly draws an arrow, it points up. So if we select a run on, then we will say the first one is a completed subject sentence. And Molly draws an arrow, it points up. That is our run on sentence. All right. So now if we look at the sentence, right, we are going to we're going to do a test now. We're going to say, is it a sentence or is it a run on? Remember we said a run on, it's almost like two sentences in one. We wanted a snack, we ate some cherries. Or after the show, all the actors bow. We need to say which one is a run on sentence. So we need to say which one is a run on sentence. Remember, a run on sentence does not express a complete thought because of the two sentences in one. All right, let's choose the first one. Just number one. And number one is correct because that one has, it's basically just separated by a comma. So we need to say now which one is, or which is a run on sentence. Sandra spilled apple juice on the carpet, or Molly draws an arrow, it points up. So a run on sentence is where it's almost like there's two sentences that is in one sentence, right? And it should have been separated by either adding a full stop. And if we look at one of these sentences, right? Molly draws an arrow, it points up, right? Which means that Molly draws an arrow. We could have said full stop. And then we just start our next sentence with it points up. Right? So this one is supposed to be capital letter to show it's a new sentence. It points up. So which means that there is a sentence and here is also a sentence. But instead of them separating the two sentences, they either just put a comma or no comma. The words in the sentence just flows. And that is why we call a run on sentence. All right, so which means that we are going to say Molly draws an arrow, it points up. So that is our run on sentence. So if we look at the sentence, which is just Josie just moved here, she's new to our country. We need to say if that is a run-on sentence, yes or no. So Josie just moved here since she's new to our country. All right, so if we look at that sentence, right, then we can say, yes, it is a run on sentence. Jason's favorite season is fall. It is cool outside. We need to say, is this a complete sentence? Yes or no. Jason's favorite season is fall. It is cool outside. This is a complete sentence. So if we look at the sentence, then we can say, no, it is not a complete sentence because it is a run on sentence. And then which one is a complete sentence? The curious girl looked into the damp cellar, or Connor picked apples. He will give some away. A complete sentence. We need to select the complete sentence. And if we select the complete sentence, we are going to go with number one. Because the curious girl is our subject, looked into a damp cellar is our verb. So if you said number one, then well done. So now which one is a run-on sentence? Remember we said a run-on sentence is like two sentences that is either separated by a comma or it basically just runs on with no end point. So the conductor took tickets from everyone on the train, or it was snowing. I wore my black boots. We need to say which one is a run on sentence. So we can say, it was snowing. I wore my black boots. Here we go. All right. And basically, this is just the same. So this is basically just now like a breakdown of a sentence, a fragment, and a run-on, right? Where we said a sentence is a complete thought and it has a subject and a verb. A sentence fragment is a group of words that does not express a complete thought. So it is usually missing a subject or it misses a verb, right? And that is a sentence fragment. So it does not have, it's not a complete sentence. And then we have a run on sentence, which is made up of two sentences that are joined without end punctuation or just a comma, right? So these are the three sentences, right? We have a sentence, which is a complete thought, sentence fragment, not complete thought, and a run on sentence that is made up of two sentences that are joined without any punctuation or just a comma. All right, so that is basically our lesson, right? That is now the end of our lesson on sentences, fragments, and run-ons. All right, so thank you very much, grade threes, for joining our class, and you should have an amazing day further. Goodbye.